Oh hi, I didn't see you there. This video is brought to you by my patrons. If you'd like to support, head over to patreon.com/Maggie Mae Fish. And by Curiosity Stream. Content warning for discussions of self-harm at this time code. If you had met me in high school, and thank God you didn't for your sake, the two things that you'd know about me is that I loved Spider-Man and I loved Wes Anderson films. When Jeff Loveness's Spider-Man Wes Anderson came out, people would run down the hallways yelling, "Maggie, have you seen this yet? It's the two things that you love, Spider-Man and Wes Anderson." And it was just absolutely the best thing that I'd ever seen. Does this story make you feel old, Jeff? I grew up in a very quiet town, and I've always said the stillness in Wes Anderson's work is reminiscent of that feeling, of time standing still while everything else is rushing past. Sometimes my family would go into Chicago for a Saturday on the Amtrak, and we'd run around FAO Schwartz and stare at the Barbie shoe bubble fountain display. Or stare at one of the many lifeless doll heads at the American Girl store. But then we come back on the train to a long tripod shot staring out the window while we returned home. Anderson's first film, Bottle Rocket, directly pulled from his experience growing up in Texas and captured that pensive stillness that he'd become known for. It was the first time I saw how I felt about my life translated into a film language that I understood immediately. Rushmore, his second feature film, also employs this stillness, but instead of communicating the stillness of isolation from the world, the stillness in Rushmore is our protagonist being isolated from everyone else around him by his own stunted immaturity. In my humble opinion, it's the Royal Tenenbaums where Anderson really elevates his presentational style. In a film about a family that has isolated themselves from one another, he uses his characteristic visual approach to describe the fraught relationship between the royals. It's like a certain family member that I haven't spoken to in years.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Royal's the first to leave the family when he abandons them, / gets kicked out. Chaz, the eldest Tenenbaum, lost his wife in a plane crash and is still struggling with his grief. Margot hides behind a wall of secrecy and is in a loveless relationship with Bill Murray's character, even though the true love of her life is her not-blood relative, Richie Tenenbaum. Richie was a child tennis star, but when Margot's pulled out of his life, he's not able to put it back together. Margot's also having an affair with her childhood best friend, Eli Cash, who was a second-rate novelist struggling with a mescaline addiction. The iconic character intro montage shows us where the characters are at the beginning of the film. They're each placed in a separate, highly stylized box. They're visually alone, and they're also alone. Whereas in Bottle Rocket, Anderson's stillness was an indication of setting, and in Rushmore, an indication of the main character's point of view, in the Royal Tenenbaums, the theatrical style reflects how the royals feel about each other, cold and distant. The first time we see Royal with the kids, these shots make them feel as far apart from their father as possible, emphasizing the emotional distance between them. A lot of the film takes place in this presentational style, where we see a character as if they're on a stage, which is fitting as many of them, especially Royal, treat their own family as if they're characters in a play. Royal is by all accounts a very selfish person who has mistreated and neglected his family. The presentational style of many of these scenes only underscore the lack of warmth and love from the royal patriarch. Maybe the most affecting parts of Anderson's aesthetic, and probably the most underdiscussed, are the moments when he chooses to break out of his presentational style. In these moments, he's signaling that his characters are finally being emotionally honest with one another. Royal and Ethel are both key characters throughout the first act, but even in scenes when they're in the same room, they're never in the same shot. Until 21 minutes in, when Royal confronts Ethel. In this scene, Anderson abandons the montage-heavy, storybook vibes he's used up until this point, and suddenly switches to long takes that feel much more natural. It's the first scene in the film that feels like it really lets the characters dig into their relationship issues, even if Royal's being dishonest. First saying that he's dying, then admitting that he's not, but then finally lying again and saying that he is. Royal is static, remaining firmly planted, the stubborn old goat on the right side of frame, as Ethel moves back and forth, in and out of frame, reacting to his manipulation. Etheline doesn't have the luxury of being a stuck, formerly gifted child, as she had to raise the children on her own after Royal left the family. Etheline had to move on. She had to keep going. One of my favorite scenes with Etheline is when she's at the archaeological site with Henry. And though they're both moving in the same direction, Anderson places them on completely different planes, showing how though they want the same thing, they're still having trouble communicating that with one another. Another famous scene from the Royal Tenenbaums is Margot's entrance. Set to These Days by Nico. This is the first time that Richie and Margot have seen each other in years. Richie is slowing down the moment in his mind, the camera soaking up every detail, a visual way to show us the longing that he's felt for her. Margot's having an affair with Eli, but they're never actually intimate with each other. The first time we see them together on screen, the camera cuts from a shot of Margot entering her room to Eli hiding in the closet. And instead of cutting back to Margot, Eli's shot just cuts to the next scene, mirroring the grammar of Royal and Ethel's relationship in the long opening sequence. Although they're in the same room, we don't see them in the same shot. There is an emotional gap between them. Margot and Eli's relationship culminates in a single take as they confront their broken relationship. They snipe at each other with petty insults.
You're in love with Richie, which is sick and gross.
Do you send my mother your clippings?
We follow along as the shot ping-pongs back and forth, almost like we're watching a tennis match, a competition. Margot was attracted to Eli's success as a writer, and Eli was attracted to Margot's place in Royal's family. They were having an affair, but for all the wrong reasons. And by the end of the shot, they've come around, finally understanding each other, finally seeing things from the same perspective. And the scene is tagged with this brilliant move, revealing the private detective that's been watching over them. The overall scene not only recalls Richie's tennis match earlier, where Margot was the emotional center of attention, but the reveal of the private eye even matches the way that we saw Royal watching Richie's match from up high, looking down on everyone else, trying to maintain some semblance of control over the family dynamics. And immediately after the bridge scene, we cut to the private eye filling in Richie and Raleigh. Instead of just talking to Margot himself, instead of confronting her and telling her how he feels, Richie falls into the same pattern as his father, trying to control things from above, and failing. Of course, this refusal to communicate is what leads into the most heart-wrenching scene of the film. Believing that Margot has chosen Eli, he removes the costume that he's been hiding behind his whole adult life. This shot is similar to many of the other head-on, flatly composed shots in the film, but with one big difference. Now we're in Richie's personal space. There's almost no shots in the entire film that place the actor that close to the camera, especially not with the actor looking directly into the lens. Or when they do, it only lasts for a few seconds, and it happens to be the other honest character of the movie. Here, Anderson puts us in Richie's personal space and holds us there for an uncomfortably long time. Leading up to the scene, Anderson has established two distinct styles in the film. On one hand, he uses presentational, montage-heavy sequences that tell us about characters, while keeping them at an impersonal distance, illustrating the emotional gulf between them. And on the other hand, he uses long, single-take, naturalistic scenes where characters actually engage with each other and start to open up in real time. But it's in the bathroom scene that these two styles converge. At about 2 minutes long, it's one of the longer scenes in the entire film, and it's one of the most intimate, so emotionally it feels like one of Anderson's long single-take scenes. And yet it's filled with jump cuts, abstract iconography, and contains maybe the most breathtaking montage in the entire film. So stylistically, it also resembles the more impersonal presentational sequences. By combining these two wildly different styles for the first time in the film, Anderson makes us feel like we're inside a character's mind, experiencing their emotions along with them. If you pay close attention to when Richie cuts himself, both cuts are punctuated with an edit, a brief flash of his falcon Mordecai. It's as if Richie's trying to edit himself, the way you'd edit a bad scene out of a movie. He's trying to cut the adult he's become out of his life in an attempt to return to the child that he once was before his life spiraled out of control, and before he lost Margot. In the beginning of the film, the only thing that united all the characters was their loneliness. All of them in some way have been isolated from one another. When all the characters are finally united in the final wedding scene, Owen Wilson's character, in a mescaline haze, crashes his car into the royal house, just as they're all now crashing into each other's lives. The camera starts zipping around the house, matching the chaos. Grammatically, the entire film is building to this moment, from the very first still character intros to this final frenetic explosion. And story-wise, I've always loved, is that the right word? The ending of Royal passing away. There are many, many works that tackle flawed and narcissistic patriarchs. Wes Anderson is a fellow bad dad enthusiast. But what really makes Royal's arc work for me is how Anderson focuses not just on him, but on those he leaves behind, and how freeing it is for them to receive closure and move on. When Royal finally does pass away, no one speaks at his funeral. A fitting tribute to a man who used his words as weapons, who would never shut the hell up, and who always filled space with meaningless bullshit. Even the epitaph he wrote for himself is bullshit. He was the most dishonest character among a cast of damaged people who were always hiding the truth from each other and themselves. But by coming back into his family's lives, he forced them to confront their demons and collide with each other. In the end, Royal redeems himself simply by accepting the fact that he can't control his family.
I never understood any of us. I wish I could tell you what to do, but I just can't.
And maybe more importantly, by coming back, he opens up space for the rest of the characters to redeem themselves. But aside from their personality flaws, the whole time there's another force keeping the Tenenbaums apart. Money.
Hi, sis.
No, you can't come, and don't even think about it! Many of the reasons the royals have been isolated from one another can be boiled down to a financial problem. Royal is first separated from the family because he's arrested for embezzlement. The only child that he gave the time of day to is the future tennis prodigy. Chaz, who started a business as a child, later treats his own children more like employees rather than his sons. Margot's escapist lifestyle is only afforded because of their wealth, presumably, and later her marriage with Bill Murray's character. And Margot's earliest success as a playwright is later attributed to her family's financial status. Eli's career success only hits home how untalented he truly is, and his inability to be honest with himself leads to his addiction problems. The children have all monetized their passions since their childhoods, so their lives become their jobs, which pushes them away from each other and away from the things that they love doing. While money explicitly created many of the problems the royals are dealing with, it's only through addressing and examining their relationships do they begin to heal from their cold, distant upbringing. The Royal Tenenbaums, to me, reads as an empathetic parody of wealthy families. The play-like aesthetics of Anderson's style is connected to the unreality of the absurdly rich. In many ways, the Tenenbaums are merely playing a family without really being one until the very end of the film. Stiff stillness is a common visual trope used to portray affluent families. It's a truism from life that's been translated into our art for centuries. The rich have the luxury of time. Their life is allowed to be slower. The poor and working class are way more affected by outside forces. It's unpredictable, and they don't have the luxury of stillness. I mean, this visual dichotomy is basically the entire premise of Downton Abbey. Just compare when we're above ground with the Crawleys. There's an emphasis on stillness and formality. And then when we're underground with the mole people, the scenes are much more cluttered, loud, and chaotic.
No, don't stop stirring, the bottom will burn.
Stories like these can be described as a comedy of manners, satirizing the artificiality of posh society. One of the more famous examples being Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. In the same vein, the fantastic film Rules of the Game from 1939 is a satirical look at upper-class French society at the brink of World War II. There's also a film called The Earrings of Madame de ... from 1953, whose lead character is so vapid on purpose, it makes me want to throw a fancy chair through her expensive window dressings. It's great, and I think the Royal Tenenbaums would comfortably fit right next to them on a shelf. Which brings me to my first favorite Wes Anderson film.
Were you gonna say something?
No. Well, actually, I think I was, but now I don't remember. Oh, yes, now I remember. No, you can't come.
I know. Also, I don't want to. And also, I can't. I have work.
Okay, well, actually, I'm in the middle of working right now, so, give me a call back in a few minutes. My junior year of high school, I was in full swing training myself like a little polka-dotted rat to, in my mind, ace the ACTs and win my one-way ticket into Chicago. Stuck in stillness no more, I spent every spare moment, not with my friends, drilling practice tests, taking extra college classes, wolfing down every possible scholarship opportunity because equal to my need to escape was my need to find a way to pay for it. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I knew getting a college education would mean I'd be paying out of my butt for years, and in that absolute mess of a time in my life, I saw Fantastic Mr. Fox. And it was the second time in my life that I had felt seen by Mr. Anderson. After Royal Tenenbaums, Anderson made Life Aquatic, which has one of my favorite rare Willem Dafoes, but is otherwise an examination of another doomed patriarchal character. And The Darjeeling Limited, mine and many others' least favorite Wes Anderson film, and maybe Wes Anderson's as well, because after this there was a shift in perspective in his work. What Fantastic Mr. Fox has in common with the rest of Anderson's filmography is that it too looks at a flailing patriarch coming to terms with his age and lot in life. Except the Foxes in this story are unmistakably lower to middle class.
But pines are pretty hard to come by in your price range.
Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox, voiced by George Clooney and Meryl Streep, begin as criminals, coded as free spirits who steal for fun and for profit. But when Mrs. Fox reveals that she's pregnant, Mr. Fox agrees to give up his life of crime and settle down. Fast forward a few years, and Mr. Fox is unhappy in his life. And at the center of that, he feels unsuccessful. And instead of listening to his wife, he goes behind her back and sets out to achieve some sense of former glory, which spectacularly backfires and ends up unhousing his entire community.
A lot of good animals are probably gonna die because of you!
Mr. Fox's character arc is exemplified by the two toasts that he gives his wild animal companions. In the first one, Mr. Fox drunkenly interrupts Mr. Badger to take the spotlight and basically shade all of his neighbors.
But I guess we have...
I'm sorry, maybe my invitation got lost in the mail. Does anybody know what this badger's talking about?
He's basking in the glory of believing that he's saved the town, but his speech is interrupted by an act of revenge from Bean, who floods their hideout with his special secret cider. Smacked in the face with his own hubris, while displaying hubris. Later in the film, after Mr. Fox has come to the realization that his ego comes at the expense of having a genuine connection with his community, he redoes his toast.
I don't like the toast I was giving. I'm gonna start over.
This time, he's able to recognize and appreciate his neighbor's unique gifts and talents.
Mole, Talpa Europea, what do you got?
I can see in the dark.
That's incredible. Beaver, castor fiber.
I can chew through wood.
Amazing. Badger, Melis.
Demolitions expert.
What? Since when?
And then there's Ash, his son. He's different. Ash has grown up in his dad's shadow and is desperate for his father's approval, although he also resents that he needs it.
I think I'm an athlete, and sometimes I feel like you guys don't see me that way.
Ash's cousin Christopherson comes to stay with the family for the summer, and he's everything that Mr. Fox wishes his own son would be.
Woo! Whoa! Look at that. This kid's a natural. I'm speechless, Christopherson.
To me, this film has one of Anderson's best flailing patriarch arcs. Throughout the film, we see Mr. Fox place his idea of himself over those around him, and we see how it pushes his own son away. It's not until Mr. Fox comes to this realization.
I think I have this thing where I need everybody to think I'm the greatest, the quote-unquote fantastic Mr. Fox.
And starts acting selflessly to liberate the town do they succeed. And it's not until he accepts Ash for who he is does he regain his son's trust. And while I love the story about a town coming together, a patriarch learning to put others first instead of himself, and animals rising up against their clay people overlords, what I love most about this film is the pure, raw, animal energy radiating from the screen. Nothing on camera is ever still. Because of the style of claymation and Anderson's insistence on using real animal fur, on screen everything moves like a Van Gogh painting. Everything vibrates. Nothing is ever still in the Fantastic Fox universe. It radiates energy in every moment. One of my favorite scenes is when the teacher, played by Owen Wilson, tells Ash the rules of whack-bat. There's a scene where Mr. Fox and Wiley are stealing squabs, and we track their movement through security cameras. There's a classroom explosion, rabid dogs, and halfway through the movie stops for what's basically a music video. Even the way the characters eat is comically animalistic. It's such a departure from Anderson's highly stylized live-action films while somehow also being one of his most stylized films. And what a fitting way to portray a family who's almost the inverse of the Tenenbaums. In the Royal Tenenbaums, money was always there in the background, informing the characters' actions, but always unspoken and implicit. It wasn't so much a concrete obstacle as a constant source of underlying anxiety. But in Fantastic Mr. Fox, wealth is what the rich use to stomp on the poor animals while maintaining an unequal society. Hello?
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 No, Mother, he called me on his own. You know, you have always pitted us against each other. Lying? Saying doubles wasn't a thing? Well, not anymore. You know what? Go ahead. Write me out of the will. You know, write both of us out of the will. We don't need your support or your conditional love anymore. Hello? Just like Royal Tenenbaum, Mr. Fox is preoccupied with what others think of him and his own mystique rather than how he treats his fellow animals. And this includes his wealth status within the community. His desire to live above ground is directly connected to the way that Mr. Fox wants to be seen. He wants to be quote-unquote fantastic, and to him that does not include living in a hole in the ground. The evil human farmers catch wind of Mr. Fox and wage war on the animals, all because of Mr. Fox's obsession with his own self-image.
Tails don't grow back. I'm gonna be tailless for the rest of my life.
The characters Bogus Bunce and Beans are depicted as evil capitalists who will stop at nothing to taxidermy Mr. Fox or anyone who dares mess with their profits or ego. The animals are the underdogs, pun intended, who end up completely displaced because of Mr. Fox's ambition. Cough, cough, Animal Farm. The empty, hollow eyes and general deathly appearance of the farmers is another satirical take on wealth. Instead of emptiness conveyed through distancing techniques, it's created through the visual characterization of these three men who literally do nothing all day but stockpile the foods they produce in factory farms, sit around, and shut down fun. Just pure misery, these three. The character Rat is my favorite Willem Dafoe. He was high school rivals with Mr. Fox, but now works for their oppressors, as he's the security guard for Bean's secret cider cellar.
It's my job.
Small details like this point to the economic systems at play that pit the animals against one another. Along with the fast-paced editing and dialogue, Anderson also dedicates long, smooth tracking shots to showing the animals working together as a community. I love how intricate and detailed these scenes are, and how the characters almost talk at animal speed. On the one hand, these scenes, again, underscore the realities of the working class, the limited resources.
I'm hungry. No. Have some water.
And the amount of work that goes into not getting squashed. However, to me, these scenes also illustrate for us what Mr. Fox is actually looking for in his life. To be a bigger part of his community. Not through the prestige of living in an above-ground house, but by celebrating each other's differences and working together to take down their evil human overlords. The frenetic energy of Fantastic Mr. Fox is a departure from the kinds of films that Anderson was making right before this, from The Royal Tenenbaums to Life Aquatic to Darjeeling Limited, which all center affluent characters. It's extremely hard being a wild animal, especially one that has no power over those few farmers at the top. The sharp editing, the cutaways, the one-liners, and the script, which I can quote front to back. This movie arrived at a time in my life when I was trying to get myself out of what felt like a hole in the ground. While outwardly I deeply related to Ash.
I'm grumpy. I spit. I wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm just different, apparently.
I also really felt for Mr. Fox's journey. Though I had been waiting to leave my slow town ever since I was 12, watching Bottle Rocket in my basement, by the time that I'd watched Fantastic Mr. Fox, I'd realized that what I was striving for was just a facade, a comedy of errors. And what I really needed, I already had. People that love me for who I was. An athlete. Eagle please deliver to Maggie's editing room?
Proud of you, sis. Hey, did you know doubles is a thing? Maybe next year. Have a good Olympics. Jay.
Wes Anderson's aesthetic is easy to parody because it's so distinct. But less often do I see discussed why Anderson makes these choices, and more importantly, when and why he breaks them. And even less so, how much of a departure Fantastic Mr. Fox was from what he had done previously. And his films were never the same again. Instead of children trying to act like adults, Moonrise Kingdom, The Grand Budapest, and Isle of Dogs all feature children desperately trying to protect their childhoods from the corruption of adult cynicism. I think that shift in perspective opened the doors for some of Anderson's most earnest and sincere work. And though the filmmaking has a stage-like quality, I can say that the Royal Tenenbaums and Fantastic Mr. Fox resonated with me on a very deep and personal level. Wes Anderson is not one who shies away from showing that his films are stories, often couching his films in devices like a narrator, stage curtains, or, in this case, a book. But I think that's because Anderson knows that stories, even if they are just stories, have the power to portray deep emotional truths. That being said, when discussing Wes Anderson, it's always relevant to point out the stark, white maleness of his casts, and his limitations of trying to depict stories outside of that bubble. Danny Glover's character, Henry Sherman, who's probably my favorite Tenenbaum character next to Margot, is underutilized given the fact that he's a literal symbol of freedom from Royal, not to mention the moral backbone of the film. As fun as these distancing techniques can be, if you already don't feel included in a Wes Anderson story, that same distance can make it really difficult to engage with his work. Below, I'm linking a few articles and videos by people who know more than me on the topic. I know he dresses like he's from London, but I hope this look at Anderson has reminded you, if anything, that he's absolutely an American filmmaker from Texas, baby. As a fan of symmetry and production design and Jason Schwartzman, I've loved and been deeply moved by Anderson's filmography, and I appreciate the pool of emotion right beneath his occasionally impenetrable dollhouse facade. Many of Anderson's patriarch characters feel like they'd be more comfortable jumping out of the movie and just monologuing at you right there in your living room, especially Royal Mr. Fox. But Anderson doesn't let them. He traps them in their own worlds, forcing them to face the consequences of their actions and the people they've hurt. And the characters with the most honesty and humanity, or those who learn the value of honesty and humanity, are the ones who come out on top. Hotbox. This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream and my streaming service, Nebula. If you sign up for CuriosityStream with my link below, you'll also get a free subscription to Nebula. You'll find all my other videos on Nebula ad-free, along with videos from your favorite creators like Princess Weeks and Mia Mulder. Because Nebula is such a great platform, CuriosityStream has partnered with them for an exclusive 2-for-1 deal. For a limited time, you can get both CuriosityStream and Nebula at a 26% discount if you sign up at www.curiositystream.com/mmfish. CuriosityStream is the streaming service with thousands of documentaries at the tips of your fingers. If all this talk about Wes Anderson and his aesthetic makes you want to scratch your fashion itch, check out Diana Vreeland, The Eye Has to Travel, about the life and work of the influential editor of Harper's Bazaar. My favorite part is when she makes fun of Hitler's mustache. That's one full year of 2 great streaming services for just $14.79. Being on Nebula gives me and so many of your faves the creative freedom to make videos like the one you just saw, so go sign up. What are you waiting for? Thank you so much for watching, and an extra special thank you to all my lovely patrons. If you want to support and see your name alongside these fine folks, go to patreon.com/Maggie Mae Fish to sign up. And thank you to Jared Gilman and Jeff Loveness for letting me borrow your face. Overthrow our human overlords and save Martha.